kind of been missing. Go ahead, Dave.
Whoever would have thought Tony Schiavone would have such a role with AEW that now he is completely interactive with the talents as well. Because before, when we'd see him, in Georgia Championship Wrestling, WCW, he was just predominantly a commentator. He didn't interact. And now he has a role in the company where he's one of the players.
He's very similar to one of our personal favorites, Mean Gene. You see how Mean Gene, after a while, his personality, he was no longer just a guy holding a microphone. He was a guy that you would interact with, and we see there's a lot of backstage interviewers, they say, hey, here's the question, and whatever the question is, and then you go to the talent, and you don't really give a shit about the person holding the microphone anymore. Mean Gene became a talent, and you wanted to hear him just as much as you, the person he was interviewing. So Tony's kind of, to me, and I don't want to compare him to Mean Gene because you're comparing him to a giant there, but
right.
That's what it reminded me of.
There's similarities. Yeah. It's cool to see because it's a different side of Tony Schiavone that I've never seen before, and I've been watching wrestling, for 35, 36 years, and it's cool to see the commentator announcer have a little bit of fire and fight back.
Yeah, I knew Tony from WCW. We became friends there. He's a big comic book guy, as a matter of fact. And he would refer to me, especially when I grew up the beard, as the Punisher of 3 Count. Just because he was a comic book guy too. So Tony's got a lot of personality, but he did his job. When you're behind the desk and you're commentating on the match, you don't want to override the match with too much personality because you'll overshadow the story you're trying to tell. So he's really good at being the dry guy, the straight guy, so to speak. So now he's getting a chance to show a little bit more personality, which is neat.
It's a very interesting point, which spurs another thought. You've got Jim Ross, who's beloved, but really didn't become beloved until after that whole series of sketches in 1999 when he was going up, with Dr. Death and Bart Gunn and all that. That's when he became good old JR and the hat and all that stuff. And then you've got Michael Cole, who also, I wouldn't say he's beloved, but he's very much respected and versatile in the business. But that, too, came from his heel run, if you will. Now, you go back to Tony Schiavone, Mike Tenay, Gordon Soley, whoever else. Just about everybody but Schiavone, aside from his TNA incident, were involved in a storyline of some sort at some time in their broadcasting career. Does that ultimately help or hurt the connection that they have with the audience as a storyteller or as a commentator from your standpoint, Shane?
I don't think it helped JR, not the heel thing, because nobody bought it. They didn't buy it at all and got away from it as quickly as they could. It helped Michael Cole because Michael Cole's hateable, which is a good quality to have. Michael Cole.
He's like you, Dameon. Yeah.
Like me as well. I can switch it on, but yeah, Michael Cole so is Mike Tenay. Mike Tenay's so intelligent, it can almost be annoying. So it just depends on if it worked or not. It definitely didn't work for JR. JR was just a likable, lovable guy, had a lovable voice.
Did it not work, Shane, or did it backfire and work?
I think it might have just, because it was so bad, like them forcing us to hate him, it really amplified, hey, we like this guy. We don't want this. We do not. We've seen heel turns that didn't work. It's like, man, we want to like this guy. Bring him back. And we've seen it vice versa. I've seen babyface turns where it's like, I don't like this guy. This shit ain't going to work, So by failing, it did kind of amplify it a little bit. But he would have got to where he was going to be no matter what. He was going to get that love and that respect just because he's the best to ever do it.
Talking about Schiavone, when they announced he was coming in to work with JR for AEW, a lot of people, I don't want to say they groaned, but they weren't that enthused. They thought, okay, they're bringing back the WCW guy on TNT. Okay, we get it. I don't think any of us, or at least I know for myself, I had no idea how much of a player he was going to become with the AEW brand. And he's been a great signing for them. Him and JR together, and you sprinkle some Excalibur in there, that announcing team is highly entertaining, especially during the pay-per-view, listening to those old-timers, and I'm calling them old-timers because they are, compared to the guys in the ring, calling the matches and the things that they're seeing, it just brings a whole different dynamic.
And let's go back to Double or Nothing And before we get to the two other big things on Dynamite this week, Double or Nothing was interesting in the way that the announcers, you talk about the old school ones, Jim Ross, Tony Schiavone, and then you've got Excalibur, who's been pretty damn good, actually. I think I was conditioned to think he wasn't good, but he's actually doing a lot more of the play-by-play and the technical elements of the broadcast than the other two are, which I wouldn't have expected. But we did see some times during Double or Nothing where some of the ridiculousness happened during the matches, and you could almost hear JR groaning. And at one point that was specific was when Marco Stunt brought out the small ladder in the ladder match. And then him and Orange Cassidy, I think it was, choke slam somebody else. And Schiavone asks JR, hey, what do you call that? He goes, I won't. And it just sounded like he meant it. So it's a new, I hate saying this because I don't think it's necessarily true in all cases, but it's a new era of wrestling. Wrestling has changed and evolved in such a way that maybe it has a lot of traditionalists looking at some of those things and wondering why, and not being in a place where they could present it the way maybe it could be presented by others. Do we think that there's any validity to that, Shane?
Yeah, definitely. I think when you're a voice on that microphone calling the match, you're speaking for the company. That's why Vince McMahon was always in that ear, because he knew that when you're speaking for him and you're representing the company. So if him by saying that, and I understand JR, he's going to be honest, especially at this stage in his career, he's more off the cuff than ever, more honest than ever. But what did it help by not putting over, that choke slam or whatever spot you're talking about? Who did that help? Who did that put over?
Right.
Still your job is to put what's happening over there to elevate the story. There's a couple of times during the Stampede that they were kind of goofing on it a little bit. Yeah, we know it's crazy. We know it's crazy. Let us form that opinion. You're supposed to help the story along. You know what I mean? So that's what I say. When you're the voice of the company, you just have to at all times be cognizant of it. No matter how many years of experience you got in the business and no matter where you're at in your life, and you're going to be super honest and all this, that's not the job. The job is to put over that product that the consumer is seeing. That's the job at the end of the day.